It's by life to the afterlife. It's by life, ayy. Yeah, we live that by life. Last of a dying breed, and we throw a bread. You could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him more like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. Yeah, we live that by life. Last of a dying breed, and we throw a bread. You could tell from our pedigree. Bring your dog for training, but we treat him more like therapy. We do this for the Lord, dog. It's all about the legacy. It go.
Welcome to another episode of Let Your Dog Talk. I'm your host, Eric Gonzalez, with my fully companion, K9 Judah. Hey, Judah. What's up, bud? Wait, back. That's a good boy. Actually, I'm giving him a piece of bread. For you guys that don't know, it's good to give him a balanced meal of carbs and protein. Remember, dogs are carnivores. They're carnivores, and being carnivores, it's important to remember that nothing beats real meat. All right, nothing beats real meat. And one of the problems that we have with our dog food is that our dog food, they mask the protein with chickpeas. Chickpeas is a protein, but it's a vegetarian protein, which is not conducive for our animals, which are carnivores. Being that they're carnivores, you want to make sure to supplement them with real meat. So, like when I went overseas, it was important that we had a balanced meal according to the military police. I was not military, I was as a private contractor. But being that we were working with the military, we have military vets or what have you out there. And so one of the things that they recommended was to carb up the dog a lot when they arrived in country. And when they arrived in country, what happens is in the travel of quarantining and everything like that, they would actually lose a lot of weight. And so we were encouraged to carb them up. So here's a good way to get them going. This is a piece of bread. They like it. A lot of dogs like cheese. I don't like cheese because it's a dairy product. But the bread is actually a good carb base for them. And they enjoy it. Now, you guys watching via Instagram, realize that if you're not watching via YouTube, you're not gonna see the whole setup, which is Judah is usually my co-host. Sometimes I'll have him to perform or whatever. So what I'm doing right now is just giving them a little bit of bread or what have you, carving them up. So a good breakdown would be carbs during the morning as well as protein at night. And the objective is, especially when you're exercising animals, which is what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And again, we're only going to be talking for about 10, 15 minutes. When you carb up a dog, you want to make sure that he's exercising. That's the purpose of the carbs. But then you need to restore the muscles that he has pretty much exhausted. And the way you restore the protein, the muscles, is through the protein. And you want to make sure that you give him. Now, the protein that I like when exercising out, I like chicken. I like the chicken with the bone, raw bone, obviously. People are concerned about the bone. The bone, when cooked, it brittles. So it's not about the bone. It's when you heat it up and it brittles the bone is what causes the problem. The bone becomes like knives. It'll cut him up and he consumes it. And what tends to happen is as he defecates, he's going to wind up cutting himself. And so when you find blood in the stool, a lot of times it's because he has internal injuries, and antibiotic will rectify that problem. But before going through all that, just don't give him any cooked bones. All right, you want to make sure to avoid the cooked bones. So you want to carb up. Now I'm using actual bread. I like bread. I don't like rice because I have to cook it. I don't like pasta because I gotta cook. Back. And so what happens is I like to carb them up. Now the way I look at dog food in general, even though you have a protein-based food, the protein that you actually have, again, is chickpea. So it's not conducive to them. So I look at dog food, dry dog food in general, like my carb intake. So let's say I'm gonna carb him up. You want to carb him up early in the day, and you want to protein him up at nighttime or her at nighttime. Make sure that the protein is at nighttime. So, a little bit about exercise. We're not going to talk about a lot. Remember, they're creatures of nature. They got 4 legs, and they can cover a lot of ground in general. So obviously, runnings or what have you, or long distances, as far as them covering long distance, extremely ideal. One of the things that I really like to do with the dogs, and you want to implement, if at all possible, is sprinting drills, sprint drills. Sprint drills is extremely very beneficial. The sprint drills allow for a lot of coordination and a lot of definition in your animal. All right, because the dogs are made up of a lot of muscles, different angles. Unlike us, where we're upright, they're kind of they're like in a laying position. Their position of mobility seems to be a lot more interesting in that you can get a lot more muscularity out of them, because when the dog is running, they're pushing off. When you got them doing jerk moves, for example, you could take a confined area like a ball, and you can throw it a lot in a confined square area, triangle area, where the ball is required to bounce off of different surfaces, allows the dog to give you a lot of jerk moves. And so by giving you a lot of jerk moves, it allows for a lot of great development in the dog's muscle tone or what have you. But sprinting is where it is at. One of the things that I love doing is I like doing a lot of frisbee with my animal. The frisbee allowed for different levels of coordination, because the dog has to time the object, which is the frisbee, flying in the air, to be able to catch it. When they're catching, they're not only sprinting. Look, they're sprinting, then they're slowing down, then they're coordinating to actually get the frisbee if it's in a floating state. Sometimes they're just gonna catch it mid-air from a sprint, but the idea is to get them to sprint as often as possible. So let's say I want to exercise my dog, but I'm limited on time. What's more conducive than a treadmill or going jogging or what have you is a frisbee. Within a matter of 5 minutes, I can exhaust my dog and get the type of work I want to instill in my animal. Right? I'm big on working the dog in the environment or climate that they're raised in. For example, if you have a dog living in New York, you're going to have a dog that's dealing with 4 climates. And so you're going to treat the climates differently, therefore work your dog at different paces. Being that I'm in South Florida, I'm in the Miami area, our winters may consist of a few days of cold weather, whereas what I like to do is I like to work my dogs in a very, I like to work my dog outdoors as often as possible. Now my dogs, I push my dogs. How do I push my dogs? When I feel my dog is exhausted, I might put him in a quick sprint scenario just to get it out of the way. Now you got to be careful, because you got some dogs that actually work themselves to the point that they'll exhaust themselves and they'll drop dead. And if you don't have the proper conditions to care for an animal that's in a climate such as South Florida, which is there's a lot of heat or what have you, you can get a dog to heat stroke. So obviously you want to monitor the dog's conditions. You want to monitor the dog's kind of thing. You want to make sure you have water on deck. However, just because the dog may seem to need water or what have you, I never allow the dog to drink at will when I'm doing training drills in a warm climate that we're in. I always make sure to have enough water, and the water that I allow the dog to consume momentarily will be enough to kind of wet their mouth. All right, mind you, you're not here to work your dog to the ground, but you want to push your animal. You got to pretty much know your boundaries based on knowing your dog. You're not going to get a puppy and push the dog as such. You got to get to know the animal, get to know your son, get to know your daughter, get to know your animal by reading the gestures that the dog conveys throughout your relationship. There are times when a dog's going to go to the bathroom and a dog will circle 2-3 times before they actually poop. Pretty much that's an indicator that he's going to do that. So if your dog is about to start circling to poop, you want to correct them fully or what have you to get them off of that mindset and then get them in the designated area. Where I say that to say, learn to read your animal. Dogs do certain things for certain purposes. your dogs will whine, they'll bark or what have you, but a lot of times they'll bark with different intensities with the intent of getting certain things. If a dog is thirsty, a dog is going to whine and or bark with more intensity than if a dog just wants to go to the bathroom or vice versa. So knowing your animal will allow you to determine what condition he's in and how to address him appropriately and accordingly. So exercise is great. You have treadmills. You got a lot of people that get a standard treadmill that you use. Create a guide and or help the animal understand the principle and just let the dog walk, jog, and or run on a treadmill. Those are great if, again, you're limited on space, time, and you can't go out. Frisbee, you might be confined to a residence, maybe because of an ailment, maybe because of a physical condition, maybe because of a handicap. But you do like dogs or what have you. To be fair with the animal, you want to make sure to give the animal the necessary exercise. And so if it means getting a treadmill, then you get a treadmill. Then you got a lot of establishments, a lot of facilities that may have many dogs, and you have your respective walkers. But there are some dogs that require more attention than others, especially dogs that are in the working capacity. And so you may have treadmills on hand just to kind of add that to your day-to-day walks or what have you. All right? That is definitely important when dealing with your four-legged companions. Remember, a lot of these dogs, for many people, are like, they're like family members, and you want to make sure that you have the time to care for these animals. And once you take on the responsibility, one of the things you don't want to do is have a dog confined constantly without mobility. One of the things that I find, especially with breeders, you got some breeders that have an environment that can allow the puppies to roam free throughout their upbringing, which is great development for the dog. I strongly believe that when a dog is a puppy, or when these dogs are puppies and they're growing with proper diet and proper field work, you're going to get a lot of excuse me, guys. I got a call. God, I'm on a live. Give me a minute. I'm on a live. Am I even live? Yeah, I'm still live. I had a fall come in. Listen, guys. So where was I? I was talking about, what was that? You recall? Man, I just got thrown off just that quick. Anybody with me? Referring to the whatchamacallit. Referring to the nutrition. Anyway, if you guys are with me and you guys remember what I was saying, I got distracted. I got somebody at the door, actually. I'm on a live. I already have assigned it, but they call me nonetheless. But anyway, guys, listen, when it's all said and done, you want to make sure that your dog have proper exercise. I was talking about the treadmills within a confined area. You want to make sure that they get on the treadmill. Again, a dog that's in an AC conducive environment is not going to be as in need of water, such as a dog that's in a natural climate. But you want to make sure they have the proper liquids or what have you to fuel the animal. You also want to make sure that when you do give the dog water, I'm big on vitamin water. The way you can add vitamins to your water would be go and get a standard. I think we have it around here, but I left it over there in the other room. Get any multivitamin that you may have, and you can add it to the water and let it disintegrate. Actually, what you can do is you can get gallons of water for the dogs, get a couple of pills, put them in there, let it disintegrate, take it up, and you'll have a yellow-based, vitamin-based water, and you can add to the water for your dogs on a day-to-day basis. That'll be extremely ideal, especially you guys that are living in warm, hot climates like I am right now, being that I'm in South Florida, what have you. It's important that these dogs are well cared for, especially with electrolytes or what have you. We also recommend electrolytes for the water for proper energy. If you're doing electrolytes, that's good. It helps them drink more water than the norm. Especially if you don't have no type of electrolytes or whatever, it is believed that adding a cup of milk to like a gallon of water would also allow the animal to consume, because what we want the dogs to do in some instances is consume more water than what they need so they can flush out their system, allowing them to urinate on a fluent basis. And by urinating on a fluent basis, it allows that excessive water with the milk or whatever push out a lot of negative elements that they may have in their system, and so the consumption of a lot of water would allow them to flush their system out. So there are ways to, adding vitamin water is great. I mean, vitamin to the water, adding, I think it's called Blue Magic or something like that, which is an electrolyte supplement. But again, you can go and get electrolytes from the store, add it to your water. It could become expensive because the electrolytes are like, for children or what have you, it's like $4, half a gallon container, which can get costly. So I think one of the best things that I use for water is a standard multivitamin, add it to the water, shake it up in the garden, and allow for the vitamins to actually be within the water. Say that again. Oh, and sea moss. So the infamous hand that's with us is obviously he's a dog owner, what have you, and he's a big enthusiast about natural healings or what have you, and he's big on the sea moss. So for example, I myself, I buy a weekly supply of natural drink from him, which has sea moss. And so what he's bringing to my attention is the power of sea moss and how a lot of people are using sea moss for their four-legged companions as well, right? So that being said, we're actually pressed for time. I got some people waiting for me outside. Unexpected visit. I need to attend to that. We've been on for about 10 minutes. So listen, I just wanted to encourage you guys, make sure your dogs get an appropriate time of exercise. Exercise is important. Remember, they're four-legged companions. I tell people all the time, don't walk for the dog, let the dog walk for you. If you guys are exercising, create a good pace, because they have four legs, they'll definitely keep up with you. And so at the end of the day, be yourself, be transparent with who you are. Don't allow the dog to rule you. Make sure that you're the alpha. And the alpha role is in many perspectives, with food, with expectations, with even your everyday conduct of how you perform or what have you. If you're laxy-daisy, the dog's gonna, because you're concerned about the dog, say it doesn't look as natural as it could be, contingent, at the end of the day, the dogs need to become one with you. You're not gonna be one with the animal, the dog needs to become one with you. And the dog becoming one with you allows the dog to be who you are, all right? So they say that a dog's characteristics is based on how one person acts, thus the dog allows to mimic that. That's what makes you guys somewhat alike versus in appearance. You don't necessarily look like the dog, but more than characteristic. Obviously, if you're a couch potato, you're going to wind up having a couch potato type of dog. But if you're an athletic individual, you're going to have a dog that most likely is athletic. And so you need to learn to be who you are so that the dog can become one with you versus you trying to adapt to the dog. When I'm handling a lot of dogs in many instances, I'm constantly encouraging the animal, the owner, not to cater to the animal. They're hesitant, they're slow, they're waiting on the animal versus them just kind of being themselves and allowing the animal to adapt to them, all right? That's very important. Any questions there, dog owner? You good? All right, so he has no questions. Are there any brief questions you guys have pertaining to the topic of exercise? I got to cut this episode short. Puppies for sale. We always have puppies for sale. Give us a call. We'll talk about that later. You guys can DM me for any personal questions that has nothing to do with the topic. The topic right now is exercising the animal. We talked a little bit about exercising the animal, as well as some of the dietary conditions and or environment, whether it be outdoors or in. Remember, dogs are domesticated. Domestication means that we brought them into our lifestyle. So a domesticated animal is an animal that's living indoors. You have to be careful when the dog is outdoors in the yard constantly. Dogs come from a wild instinct, a natural, a state of nature. And when you put them in a state of nature, even in your environment, a lot of their behaviors can revert back to the wild only because you're putting them in a state that is conducive to their makeup. All right. So remember, a domesticated animal is an animal that's an indoor family dog, and the more you allow the dog to be free outdoors, the dogs will have a tendency of adopting more of that wild instinct. All right, guys? So I hope that's helpful. If you guys have any problems or concerns pertaining to that, please feel free to hit me up and DM me, all right? As far as you guys on YouTube, listen, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Looking forward to doing it again next week. We'll see you next week, Wednesday. Good? All right, guys. Take care. DM me